not every designer is expected to launch their own brand.
Went to Pearl for a bit where they basically said you're never going to be a designer.
Really?
I got my reception outfit on the day off, or like maybe one day before.
I want to know about AI.
Yeah.
How much you believe in it? How scared are you? How confident are you about it?
Wore it, and like that time you're young, you really don't care about who, what, where. It was like I think pre-Insta. Went and like a lot of like these aunties were like, where's it from? Where's it from? And I was like, you like this?
Thank you, Shweta, for taking out your valuable time. I know there's so much that goes on in our everyday lives, but the Style Circle is something that I've started with passion, and I am making this list of people that I feel share that same value with me. So I just really am grateful that you're here.
I've also heard you talk about this for so long, so I'm like really excited to be like here and just be a part of it.
But honestly, what I really want to do is take a quick dive into your educational background. Primarily because I want this podcast to be like a learning format as well as we go around talking. So can you tell us how it started, where it started, and your learnings?
I think the learnings and the education part of it was always in two parts. So one, of course, is your formal education. So went to Pearl for a bit where they basically said you're never going to be a designer.
Really?
I think it also comes with a thing like, like you're privileged, you're entitled, so you don't have it. But I just found that, I just thought it was bullshit.
Yeah.
Also, I feel like they were not training you for you to be you. It was very like textbook centric.
Okay.
I wasn't happy there, so I dropped out. I went to London College of Fashion. And there the education system is completely different, right? Like India is very textbook based. And which also makes a lot of sense because we do know our technicalities to the T. But there it was very like, look, you get 15 minutes with your tutor in a week.
Yeah.
Now you come with like 10 pages of work or 10 books of work. It's all on you and like how you use it. And that really forces you to explore, make a lot of mistakes and also value like time and money. Right. And I think that aspect really helped me to understand who I am and what kind of designs I'm exposed to, because your classmates are from all over the world.
Yeah.
So globally you're really like exposed. And so that was the formal side of it. And then I think the learning part, like the major learning chunk was with a lot of internships.
Yeah.
So I did a summer internship regardless, wherever I used to get an opportunity, I was there. So I worked with Nitin Balchauhan, I worked with Abu Jani Sandeep Khosa, I worked with some fashion magazine, I worked as an internship as an usher at Fashion Week at FDCI.
Okay.
I've done fabric sourcing for Burberry, I've done literally everything for this company in New York called VPL, and everything was so hands-on, and also teaches you like practical things on how to apply that to your own business.
Right.
Because what I feel is like fashion school will teach you how to cut clothes, how to choose the fabrics, how to design, but never like how to run a business.
Right.
And to be honest, that's not a designer's job, right?
Yeah.
And not everyone is expected to also launch their own brands. That's not sustainable, and I just honestly don't recommend it to everyone.
I feel like that's a big difference though. Like what you just said is that not every designer is expected to launch their own brand. That is not how I guess that's where the textbooks come in, that's not how they look at it.
Yeah.
They're not saying that, okay, you become a designer and launch your own brand and do da-da-da. That's a very Indian sort of Asian mentality.
It's once also you learn like globally, I feel like no one talks about like how much more money you can make and how much more time you actually have in your personal life if, for example, you become a great pattern cutter.
Correct.
Right? And then maybe you're just freelancing and making patterns for different brands.
Right.
And the amount of money and freedom you'll have, it's insane because not many people are doing it.
But it's not looked as a...
It's not like, oh my God, wow. Because here in India, we're like, okay, Master G will make it.
Right.
But Master G is also doing it in a very different way, right? Like you have to put the technicalities, you have to put like Indians, like if you really look at our tradition, like go way back. We never used to cut our clothes, we used to drape our fabrics.
Right.
Because when we used to weave our fabrics, we used to weave stories onto the fabrics.
Right.
So obviously no one had the heart to cut through that.
Yeah.
So, which is why all our garments are drapes, like the saris, the lungi, the dhoti, everything is draped. While the Western culture is all about the cuts,
tailoring
and the cut, tailoring. Right. So how do you apply that to something which is now, and how do you keep renewing that and kind of just going with the flow and seeing where that takes you? And or you could be an illustrator, or you can just be someone who sources fabrics. Like there's insane amount of money and freedom in that.
Right.
But because I think everyone is so no, I want to have my own brand, and I was a part of it. I wish someone had told me this before, and actually my tutor did. I just didn't like listen
And so
to
then
him.
what would you do? Like if we hold that thought there, and if you realize, oh listen, I don't have to take on all of this on my shoulders, then what would you do?
I would have been a researcher.
You'd have been an R&D, like in
Full
fashion R&D?
Full R&D.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
For like textiles or for design?
Anything, designs, textiles, silhouettes. That was my forte in uni, and I used to be really good at it.
Yeah.
And design also is 80% R&D.
I mean,
you know,
yes, in that
like
respect,
how
it is.
much you research, how much you put your own work into it, how much you explore. That is what leads to a good design. And I used to think like, oh, I'm like great at this, so I'll be a great designer, which is not necessarily true.
It's not how it works.
And also, if you're a good designer, you're also necessarily not the best business person.
Yep, it's interesting you say that. We spoke about this with Payal also when she was here. She also mentioned something similar, that you know, it's one thing to be a designer and great to be a creative god, but then who tells you how to make the money and how to spend it, right? It's a very...
No one tells you.
No one tells you.
Yeah, I mean, you have enough people who are telling you how to spend it.
Yeah, of course.
You know, like, oh, like you must do this and you have to do this.
But how do you make it?
And like also like very like condescending, like, oh, you're not doing this. Like that's why your brand is not doing well, or that's why you're not getting the reach because, oh, your Instagram is like that. Oh, you haven't heard about this. So it's a lot of free
It's a lot.
yarn.
Anyway, today too, it's like a next level. It's another animal.
Another animal, but like, you know, things like what does your balance sheet look like? How are you hiring people? You've hired a team, great, but now are they performing? How do you
manage them?
You know, how are you doing the salary structures? It's another beast altogether.
Yeah. So you have somebody helping you with that in your business?
I have a lot of people helping me with that.
Okay, lovely.
I don't think anyone can
do it all alone.
The thing is, like, my family, no one really has a business background in business. So we all are kind of like, mom and I are just basically learning on the go.
On the go. Got it.
We are continuously, year on year, taking courses and mentorship from people who know things we don't know. And I think that's what pushes you forward, right? Like,
but I think that's a really positive way to look at it, because a lot of people get closed down to, this is how I work, this is what I know, and I don't want to do that. So I think it's great to know that.
Which is also great. I mean, it's fine, but then you don't scale up, right? So,
but that's what I'm saying. Like if in today's world you want to do all those things like scaling up or appealing to a more global audience, there are steps you need to take. And the fact that you are still, you know, willing to learn with or without your mom, however it works, I think that's a really great way. So are there any things that you tell your younger self that, listen, I mean, you know, because like for example, me, like when I was studying in college, there's one thing that I didn't do was study abroad, because I felt I'm already abroad. You know, like, what is study abroad and why should I do it? I'm in New York City, I love it. So like that is my...
studying in New York?
I was doing fashion merchandising at FIT. I was in FIT, so I was in New York City. Like, to me, the world was at my feet. Like, I was just like, oh my God, this is amazing. Where do I go from here? Why should I do that? But hindsight, I feel like that was my one, you know, the one thing that got away, so to speak, that I could have taken Spanish in Mexico City and, you know, done something in Milan with fashion. And I just let go of it because I was so consumed by NYC. But for you, with London and with Pearl even, do you have things that you didn't do that you regret, you want to tell the students who may be watching, or fashion aspirants who may be watching?
I think 100% just explore other avenues within fashion, because I just think there's so much that's untapped.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there is a life beyond content creation and designing or styling. Like, I feel like these are just 3 building blocks, and people think like, you know, I do this and I'll be famous, and no one's even thinking about the money aspect. So, and I think like, fine, like, fame is good, not good, it's completely subjective, but how do you sustain, like, how do you build a life? how do you
make
build a
that,
team,
right?
right? It's not about just being like, okay, I've been in the industry for like 5 years now, I'm going to hire an assistant and the assistant's going to do everything and I'm going to be in the Bahamas and chilling and, you know, life will go
I feel like
on.
we're talking about someone here.
No, it's not me. But
Okay.
that's not how it works.
Yeah.
I mean, like there is an art to delegate and there is an art to, while you're delegating, the idea is like you get more free time to grow the business and grow the company and or even just grow yourself, right? Like,
so you would tell your younger self that, listen, explore more avenues within
100%,
fashion or the creative
100%,
world.
yeah.
Okay. Something that you did really well back in the day that you felt like, wow, I managed that even then, something like that?
The fact that I just did what I had to do, I mean, I was never scared of anything. I always knew there was a bigger purpose than just to do something small. I think like for someone like, I think like this 23-year-old who had zero idea on doing anything. Plus, like India doesn't take young women seriously, right? So just to kind of be like, you know what, I'll just do it without thinking. I think that was one thing which I probably did right.
Okay. Moving on to now, you've gotten done with your education and you built this brand, right? 43188. I know why you call it that. I want you to tell everybody what's behind the numbers.
It's just the last 5 digits of my phone number.
Okay, it's very simple.
Very simple. But now all our office numbers, they all end with 43188. So
oh really?
Yeah. So it's
so you went out and did that.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. That's like one of those devils in the details sort of thing. Okay, cool. So tell me now, coming to the fashion part of this conversation, I want to know a life cycle of a garment in your world.
Yeah.
So for example, you know, where do you draw your inspiration from? And from that inspiration, how does it trickle down to the pattern making and the cutting and finally to stores?
I think the inspiration usually is what I want to wear.
Okay. So something that you feel is missing.
Yeah, like even like, you know, like the sari, which is like, I mean, really blown out of proportion. Then there was a really funny story behind it because I picked up this metallic plissé fabric.
Okay.
I ordered it on a whim, and then it came. I actually don't like it.
Yeah.
And then it was just lying in the studio for
like one of the many things that happened to us.
Yeah, and
you order and you're like,
something.
Yeah.
And one of our common friends was getting married, and he had 100 functions.
Of course.
This was pre-COVID, so obviously, like, you know, there were like 100 people, like 1,000 people for each function. And
gosh,
by then you get sick of like even dressing up and shopping, right?
Yeah,
You're just like in that.
You just wanna,
You just have to go, so you go. And like I was like, fine, let me just drape a sari because again I was running late as usual. There was no excuses. I'm just this person, so I've just learned how to accept it. And running late in the sense like I had to go for his function at night, and this must be around I think 1 p.m.
Okay.
And see this like blingy fabrics. I was like, you know, just make a sari.
This will do.
You know, this will do.
This will
just
do.
like drape something and whatever. Like my master G was great, and he was just like a little like
hesitant.
Judgmental.
Oh, judgmental.
He's like, what are you doing? I said, no, just make it. Just make it.
Just make it. Yeah.
Wore it, and you know, like that time you're young, you really don't care about who, what, where. It was also like I think pre-Insta era, so went and like a lot of like these aunties were like, where's it from? Where's it from? And I was like, you like this?
Yeah.
And then I was like, yeah, let me just sell it.
Right. And you had 431, like
it was running for like 4 to 5 years.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I was like, yeah, let's just sell this. And then like I put it in the market, and everyone was like, what's wrong with you? Like this is like not okay. And
really?
Yeah, everyone rejected it. And I used to sell that sari for like 8,000 bucks. Like, because I was like, koi to le lo, you know, because I need to finish that fabric kathan.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah. And then like somewhere down the line, we used to convince people. There were some people who were kind of fashion forward. They're like, yeah, this is cool.
Yeah.
They picked it up. And then, but people used to make fun of it. They used to make fun of me. They were like, lost the plot. And I don't know, like something has happened that suddenly everyone wants the same thing. And
did it get picked up by like maybe a stylist or a celebrity or something, which kind of?
It got picked up by Ensemble. And Ensemble is, you know, it's like the more experimental store within the stores.
Yes.
And they were like, okay, let's just try this. So they tried it, and I think they styled it in a very different way.
They do. Their windows and their
Yeah.
display and exhibit is really fun to watch because
Yeah.
so many times it's happened with me also when I walked into the store. I'm like, is this all one? And they're like, no, these are 3 different pieces from 3 different people.
Yeah.
And then you closely look at it and like, oh yeah, of course, this
Yeah.
is this and this is that, and this just looks great. So
Yeah.
yeah, I can see what you're saying.
So they did some magic there. I think some celebrity must have won it. I just can't remember who.
Yeah.
But somehow that just made it really popular. And then
Oh, wow.
everyone wanted more and more. And then it was really selling. Like we were selling like 100 pieces a month. So
Oh,
we
wow.
started getting more
More.
colors in. We started, and people were just like, any random ugly color we would make that in, like it would just sell out.
It would just sell.
So obviously we started like hiking up the prices. Now it's
Yeah.
gone up to I think like around 26K from like a measly
Which is still a
8K.
very modestly priced piece
It
of
is,
clothing
yeah.
in one of the bigger
Yeah.
stores, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think, and which is another something that's crazy how prices are just skyrocketing. Like now, you know, even like tops and tunics that are not even in pure fabrics. Like
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I belong to that part of time where I felt like, oh, this is a pure fabric.
Yeah.
That's great. Now
Yeah.
there's nothing known as pure anymore. I
Yeah.
feel like, you know, so even if you're a regular tunic and top, people are shelling out 20K.
I
Right?
don't blame them, right? The thing is, your dyeing costs have gone up.
Yeah.
All the wars that are happening, oil prices have shot up like tremendously.
Right.
It has to have a trickle effect. Like we think like all this doesn't affect us, but it's really
No, I
affecting us
agree.
in
It
our
totally
day-to-day.
affects.
So
Absolutely.
anything which requires oil, and that's a majority of our production process.
Yeah.
The prices have substantially gone up everywhere.
I
So-
also feel like the price that the market can bear has gone up. Like there was a time
I mean,
where
you
people
can't
would
like
just
you can't sell a
Yeah.
say like even if there's a really small company selling a tunic pants for and they could for 10K. I remember
Yeah.
at the time. I don't think they can sustain if they don't sell for 30K.
right.
You know, there's
Makes sense.
it's just like habits, right? Like people now want it packed in a certain way, or we don't do COD, but a lot of people who do COD, they just don't pick up the calls, and you know now
Yeah.
the company has spent money on shipping it and then suddenly-
Making it and shipping it, right?
and
right.
it's brutal out there, and then the competition is insane.
It's
It's
quite
insane, and there's also nothing original, right? They'll be like, oh, like this situation is working, let's just sell that. Like the amount of Dhruv and Kanika's shirt copies that I've seen.
Oh my
it's-
god. It's a whole different
joke.
conversation. I
It's a
feel like
joke.
I can do a whole podcast just on that tie-up shirt. Like it's insane.
It's insane.
It
Like,
is
and
crazy.
It's not just that the copycat brands, like the boutique brands, are doing the same thing. I've seen high-end, so-called high-end designers copy the same thing. You know, but I mean, and it used to really bug me. Like I
Yeah.
was like, oh, now so and so's copied my shirt or my sari, and it used to,
Yeah.
or my skirt. It used to bug me to no end. But then you just like you let it go, right? You're just like,
But I feel like I guess that's the catch-22 of being a trendsetter.
yeah.
Is because I mean, it's not like you did it knowingly that now everyone will follow this, but you did it with your heart, with
Yeah.
your originality, and
Yeah.
it was born out of this need to just throw something on because you don't have time.
I mean, yeah, my
And that's
skirts are
become-
all of them are like that. Like
And that's
it's just-
become the ethos of that sari. Literally,
even the
it's
skirts, like I feel like we drape it up. Like I mean, my wedding clothes for lack of anything, I
Yeah.
could not find anything. They were all like cans. They were all like really frou. It
Yeah.
was not me. I got my reception outfit on the day off, or like maybe one day before.
that's a whole different segment
Again,
in our
like last minute,
conversation.
I'm a
but
huge, like, last
we're
minute
gonna
late.
get to that because I know that you've recently been married and your looks were splashed all over, and we definitely want to talk about that. But I just want to come back to the life cycle of the product in your world. So, like when you get inspired, where do you get inspired from? Like, what's your
Again, just
mode of-
what I need, right? So,
So
if
what
I
you need.
something, a lot of my inspirations also on the basis of how I look. I'm really body conscious.
Okay.
I've suffered from like anorexia, bulimia, the works, like
Everything.
in uni. So I've always had a really bad body image, and I think whenever I'm working on a drape, for me it is important to see how it sits on me,
On you.
on how it looks, how you're styling
Right.
it. So I think like even though while the team is making something, when we do put on the body, there are a few tweaks that are done on a not on the dummy but on a real person,
On a
just
real
to see
person.
how it looks.
Because it also changes with movement, I assume.
It does, and
right?
also like
Yeah.
very practical things, like when you're stepping outside the car, is like too much leg showing.
How much does that open and
Yeah,
all that?
I
Right,
mean,
get
like
it.
when you have women designing for women, it's a completely different ballgame because
You can see that also.
you can you know how uncomfortable one
Yeah.
can be,
Yeah.
or how comfortable one can be. So I think it's important to kind of just address those really small
Nuances,
nuances,
that stuff
is
that
the neck
Indian
okay,
women know. Like,
yeah.
I understand. So then once you get inspired, or once you draw a need that you have in your closet, and then you go out and sort of play around with textures and
Yeah.
fabrics, and then it goes on to, and then how do you then envision to style it and put it out in the world? Because that's another story, right? Like, it's one thing that you
Yes.
came up with a shirt that you love or a skirt that you love,
Yeah.
but now as a business, for it
Yeah.
to make money, for it to turn around, then what do you do? Like, how does
That's
that
when
work?
you get a stylist on board, because you have a very very narrow vision of how you want your clothes to be worn. I feel what a stylist does, it broadens the perspective, and also they have the eye to kind of visualize. I mean, I am great with saying, okay, like, this will look great on you in real life. What a stylist does is like, it's going to look great in an image. This is how we should shoot it. These are the colors that we
Right.
should work with. If it's a blue skirt, should we shoot it on a blue background, on a red background?
Right.
How can we make it pop more on your screen?
Yeah.
So that's a very, I think, like, again, that whole idea that I'm the designer, I'm the founder, I know best, that needs to be like wiped away.
No. And I think it's getting away with. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of people are putting a lot of their faith in creative forces that do their job well.
100%.
You know,
and
like, I've
looping
seen
back
that.
to where we started, like, again, now you can be someone who's fine styling it, but what about someone who's doing the set for
Yeah,
shoots, right? To
absolutely.
be like, okay, fine, you want to shoot this fabric, it will look great on this backdrop.
This backdrop.
Or, this is how we should shoot it. So you come up with concepts for shoots.
Right.
You can just be someone who's be like, okay, fine, you don't want to shoot it on a model, let me see how we can do it as a flat lay, and that can completely be your niche.
So you sit on these meetings and you put this team. Do you have a set team, or do you keep like fishing for newer talent?
I have
or?
my favorites for the season, so I know
Okay.
who shoots well with the saris, or who shoots well with contemporary. I have my favorite photographer, so
Okay.
I always end up going back to him. And then we decide on, like, okay, fine, like, these kind of clothes maybe needs a stylist like this. Or
Right.
if I want to work with a stylist, we'd be like, okay, this is the mood board, we feel like this photographer can shoot it
Pull
best.
this out,
Yeah.
right? So tell me a little bit about this dream team. Like, if you had it, no strings attached, no
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
and you've built this collection, what would be your dream team look like?
I've been dying to work with Red Berman, so
Okay.
that's definitely on the charts. But these days, I mean, Tarun Kalyani, he's worked with most of my campaigns, and it's also easy to work with him because we've found our
Vibe.
vibe, and like we fight a lot.
Okay.
On set, off set, and there's a lot of like drama pre and during. But it's nice because he knows exactly what I want. I know if I give him a free hand, he'll do the best. So I don't have to constantly be behind the screen to be like, can you do this? Can you do
Right.
that? So that itself is so empowering, because when you reach the set, you've done whatever you could. You've made your clothes,
Right.
you've got the team. Now it's important to just let them do what they
Let
have
it take
to.
its course, right?
Even on show day, like on the day of the show, I'm least nervous because I mean, now I can't do anything.
Yeah.
So
Because it's all done.
it's
No,
all
but-
done. It's like, okay, fine. One day before the show, yes, you still have time to prep. But the moment clothes are backstage, then they don't need you there. There's an ironing
Right.
team, there is a makeup team, there's a hair team.
So
and-
tell us, like, that's what I want to know. I want to get into the details, and I
Yeah.
want you to share titles as well. Like, for example, your top model, or
Yeah.
your top photographer, your top makeup person. Like, I'm talking about really building this team if you had to.
Again, very different, right? It depends. Like, again, collection to collections. Tarun is usually on my team. Rid I've been dying to work with. Priyanka Kapadia, the stylist, I've been dying to work with her for a while. In terms of hair makeup, I just worked with Akram and Yin. Both were really, really good.
Yeah.
And again, very clean. Models, again, there's so many interesting faces.
You just
and
want to...
And it really depends on like what the clothes look like, because each collection requires a different face. But I usually tend to pick faces which are slightly more mature. I don't like to work with models who are like far too young, because I feel that's not the brand. In terms of production, we usually go with Dwarkesh and his team.
Okay.
Who's also understood like what I need and what
They're for videographies or for
they
like...
will handle everything.
They just do the whole
I just have
shoot.
to show up. Like they'll book the studios, they'll have the catering ready, they will have my favorite coffee in place.
Oh wow.
It's a
nice.
full, and he knows how to make my sandwich, when to give me the biscuit, when to give me, like he's amazing. So,
oh my god, this is something worth exploring.
Yeah,
nice.
it's a like they spoil you till no limit. So I think it takes a month, for me at least, from shoot to getting the images on board.
Okay.
While the images are getting edited, we work with the unedited ones. Now the internal team takes over. So the design team is done and dusted with. The merchandising team and the sales team, they sit. They, again, everything we shop, how we shop now is through our phones and computers.
Yes.
So whatever looks good in an image often does the best. So we go through the images, we do our study, okay, fine, this product is priced at this much.
Yeah.
Let's put the production order in. We're expecting these many pieces to sell in medium, these many pieces to sell in a large.
And this is all from previous
data.
All
through data. Nothing is, of course, there is a bit of your gut instinct, but 80% is all data. Then your stores come in, they see the collection, they place their orders. Then we have one good consolidated chunk of orders, like so-and-so shirt, these many pieces, small, medium, large, extra large. Goes to the production team, fabric is ordered accordingly.
Yeah.
Goes for dyeing. If there's any correction that like the sales team will be like, you know, the slit is too high, you need to taper that down. Design team works on those changes, and then it's to the stores.
And then it's to the stores.
Yeah.
So for people who are like budding designers, people who are now starting out literally from their homes and, you know, that one outhouse that's there and they're just sewing clothes, what are some of like your top 3 hacks to get into stores? Like what would you tell them that, listen, these are the 3 things you must do if you want to be, you know, getting into the door? Be shameless.
Yeah. Okay. Like everyone's looking for new talent. But, and just have a really interesting perspective.
Point of view. Like
100%. Like you need to be different from what's there in the market. Either your quality is incredible and you're just cutting like a really good shirt.
Yeah.
And like that's it.
Like,
and just be shameless. Just DM like merchandisers. It's really easy to
like
stock.
cold call your way through as much as you can.
And just DM Instagram. Like it's the best. Like run ads if you can. It's not very tough.
I mean, slide into people's DMs and
just
put in a little bit of Google ads.
Slide into stylists, influencers.
Do you think that works?
It works because it does give you a reach.
Yeah.
A lot of times the merchandisers, store merchandisers are also looking at influencers to see like who they are wearing, what they're wearing.
Right.
If they find a brand consistently is taking out collections which has a signature USP or you know just a signature to it. Number 3, just have a great narrative. The way you tell your story. You might have the best product, the best quality, you might have an insane reach in the market, say even the stores pick it up, right?
Yeah.
And how will the customer pick it up again and again and again? That's only through storytelling.
Right.
So
that's really massive.
Who you are and, you know, and...
So with your last point, right, when you're saying that narrative should be really strong and whatnot, but what I want to know is with your brand, and you can obviously correct me if I'm wrong, but I've seen your brand grow, right? Like from the time it's been launched till your wedding looks, right? Because your wedding looks, I'm assuming you're going to incorporate a lot of that. I'm sure people are asking you to make this for you and make that for you and whatnot. So I've seen that, I've seen the brand grow and evolve. I want to know, when you become a staple in people's wardrobes, you're not a basic, right? And you're not even an elevated basic. You're like a timeless classic piece that can hang but that classic piece does its job. Every time it's required, it performs.
Yeah.
Right? That's what your brand does, right?
Yeah.
So how do you keep reinventing? How do you make that exciting? Because to me, like for example, if I have like, okay, listen, this 43188 sari is my go-to. God, I need to go somewhere. I have 10 minutes, throw that on,
Yeah.
put something on, and you're done, right?
Yeah.
And my 80% of my body is covered in that sari, which will make me look good. But then now what? Like, how do you ensure that your brand continuously reinvents?
Yeah.
You know, because that's the exciting part of a brand that does staples. Like,
I think you have to keep questioning yourself. You have to keep working on yourself. What we found basic and interesting 5 years ago, it's not the same right now, right? Like we're not wearing the clothes we used to wear 5 years back.
Absolutely not.
So you have to reinvent, and you have to just be strong and like you look at the row, right? Like it's again strong staples and expensive stuff.
Right.
I mean, it's a very small section of society who can buy the row again and again. Like usually would buy that one investment piece and like just be like, okay,
hopefully the biggest one.
Hopefully the biggest one. And like, but you know, how do you get people to keep coming back?
Yeah.
One, of course, is that you keep working on the smaller segments, the aspiration segments.
Okay.
You work on, so say like if I know the sari is a staple and you bought a sari.
Right.
How many saris will you buy, right?
Right.
From me. It'll be 1, 2, 3, max 5.
Yeah.
You'll get bored.
I could be guilty of more, but that's just
But
me. It's
how
fine.
many will you buy? Right?
I know
it's
what you
the
mean.
same thing.
Yeah.
But you know, can I help you in wearing it differently? Like, you know, can I give you more blouses? Can I give you more styling options? Can I give you more things to wear it with? Because again, we're not promoting like mindless consumption.
Yes.
In fact, when a lot of times when people come, they're like, oh, we want the sari. I'm like, I know why you've come, because you want that one piece in your cupboard, but like, get your blouses. You know, if you have any blouses which you've just got because we have, you know, hundreds of those.
Yeah.
And you want to like figure out what to wear with it.
Yeah.
Get it here. Let's find something which goes with that, which complements that. And sometimes people are like, oh, like, you know, I don't want to like wear sleeveless. I want to cover my arms. And I'm like, sure, cool, but you know, let's think beyond just a blouse.
Right.
Can you wear it with a blazer, with a shirt? Can you wear it with like an interesting cape? And it's crazy, like how many times that one sari can last, or how many times that one skirt can be worn again and again, just by making it look different.
And it performs every single time.
And it performs. It also pushes you.
Right.
Otherwise, it's very easy for me to be complacent, and I've been complacent in the past, where I'm just be like, yeah, people are buying it, so let's just make it.
Let's just keep making it.
And it does affect business, because if people are buying me, there's someone who will make it in a cheaper fabric, or or not even. I mean, I've had people who are selling it a little far more expensive than what I am selling.
Really?
They'll just put some little tweak here, or like throw embroidery on it, and it sells. But you can't just, again, that's the thing, like you can't be complacent and you can't get lazy.
Yeah.
You have to keep pushing.
You have to keep pushing.
The only way you push yourself is when you keep questioning who you are, what does the market want, have they moved on, and what are they looking for without knowing.
Tell me, do you have any of your sources where you get all this information from? Because it's easy to eyeball. Of course, we eyeball our parties and our like regular places that we go, that we can see that this is trending, this is not trending, people have stopped. But in general, to get actual real information, do you have sources that you go to?
My team, they are, I mean, they're great. They'll be like, you know, this is trending.
But for your personal archiving, like for your personal viewing, like when you were on your phone or when you're surfing.
Instagram, like I'm a big stalker on Instagram.
You are.
I love Instagram. Like all the ads are targeted towards me. But more than that, it's easy viewing. You can, you know, you have access to any magazine, any article.
Right.
You find interesting people who might not have millions of followers, but are interesting in their own way, and you see how they dress, and you know, you'll be like, oh, that's a cool way of wearing a shirt.
Yeah.
Like just the other day, I saw someone wear a blazer with a shirt, but the way she had tucked the shirt in was so interesting. I was like, you know, I want to try that.
That could be something.
Yeah,
cool.
that could be something cool.
So tell me who you're stalking on the Instagram.
I stalk a lot of Tanya Serene is usually my.
Okay.
She's got a great sense of style and personality. also these days I think I'm stalking a lot of people who do up interiors and homes.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Is that for your own home? Like,
For my own.
Okay, okay. I want to know about AI.
Yeah.
How much you believe in it? How scared are you? How confident are you about it? And are there any current AI tools that you use that you recommend to people who are watching us?
ChatGPT is great for recipes. Like
For
honestly,
recipes?
it's great.
Oh my God.
It's great. Like I'll just
Okay.
randomly put in like I have 4 girls coming over for dinner. What can I make in 5 minutes?
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm not a cook.
Yeah, okay.
I used to. I mean, I only know how to make coffee and toast. Like I'm that bad.
Great.
But in terms of like how I'm scared, I don't think there's anything to be scared about. It's just it's just a tool.
Yeah.
It's how you use it. You can.
Right.
We've used it for some of our graphics.
Okay.
And some of it is, if I do it, it's atrocious.
Right.
But if I ask my design head to do it, he knows exactly what prompts to give it, and it's come up with the most beautiful images. I think, like in the long run, it will actually make people who actually do work with hand, right? Like say someone who's making, and fine, it can be like tomorrow you program AI in a way that they can be making fabrics, and you just tell them, okay, I need the fabric to look like this. Now just weave the whole thing.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people that is scary, but I feel like fine, you'll end up doing that. The scale will be immense. Fabrics might become, say, like maybe 100 rupees a meter, something which is currently $1,000 a meter.
Yeah.
But what it'll do is that people who are actually doing things by hand, their value will go up, and they will end up taking more in. And that's how their jobs will always be secure, because in the long run, you will not be able to copy anyone.
Okay.
Because AI is doing that already.
One of the things with AI is that when you prompt AI to give you all these things, it really does a really good job.
Yeah.
Right? And you can see those jobs slipping away, because you suddenly feel like, do I need a real content writer?
Yeah.
Do I need a real, somebody who's doing my R&D for me, where I have, but I have noticed that the prompts, the answers that you get back, the stuff that you get back is still vague.
Because that AI can never put emotion into anything, right?
I guess
so
not.
Yes, in the short run,
not yet.
Anyway. Jobs will kind of go away, but that emotion, like, it's like your mom's food. When she's cooking for you, there's a certain love that she's putting in it.
Right.
And you can taste it.
Right.
Right? So there's a soft energy which is very human. Right. And I mean, as much as tools are great, I'm very old school. I still think like when you sketch pen to paper, again, that energy flow is something else.
It's more sacrosanct. It's not something that's
not
untouchable.
Like, even if you're drawing on an iPad, it's not the same thing.
So tell me, when we're looking at AI as now their tools, we're coming forward, what are the next steps for 43188? Like, we're already in the coolest stores. We have a great website, right? We have a nice Instagram page, which is like telling stories on a daily basis. What do you see next for the
more
brand?
Cooler stores. Cooler people we can dress. Find more women, more men who can be a part of the tribe, and who can also keep pushing us, how to make better clothes. Again, just work, like currently we're working on our sales strategy. We're reinventing the whole game. We're working on, when I started 43188, the brand was my baby. But now it's like, it's become a teenager per se, and I work for the brand.
Right.
The brand doesn't work for me anymore. And so it's taking its own path, and we are just there, working for it, supporting it.
But what about like maybe any global representation? Have you thought of like maybe?
Well, we do have a global team, so they are doing their job. But I do think it will take time to have the same impact like how we have in India right now.
Yeah.
But we're looking forward to doing some more like art exhibitions, like we did Pause last year, and for me that was really personal, again something which was really beautiful, because it got everyone into the ecosystem of 43188, and it was done in a way that anyone who was entering that space had to question who they are while witnessing what 43188 is as a brand. So working on the next one, which will be less of a fashion show, more of an art exhibition or an experience, I think.
Yeah.
But whatever it is, we don't know how it will come out to be. But whether it's like a show with models walking up and down or just an art exhibit, but it'll definitely be an experience which will touch you and which will make you think beyond about what you're just about your everyday life. Right? It will make you think who you are and where you want to go.
So I want to talk about something that I get very excited about: collaborations.
Yeah.
Right. It's something that is, I don't know, I truly feel like I look at two brands and I'm like, why don't you guys collaborate? Like that's who I am. That's how I feel and how I see things, because I think I love putting things together. And so when I'm curating anything, I'm always like, why don't these guys work together, right?
Yeah.
And you have done two exciting collabs. One is with Ikaya, which is very cool.
Yeah.
And the other one with Akshay Tyagi for your menswear, right? And so I want to first talk about Ikaya, because I feel that was just a very natural, a very organic collab, because, you know, Ikaya stands for what it does, with all its hand wovens and, you know, the natural fabrics, and I guess the traditional, you know, they bring out the traditional art of the sari, and nobody's been able to touch that for them, right? Because they're so good at it. And then you come in with a complete global sensibility of, like, you know, making the sari an easy staple, you know, pre-draped skirts. So that collab, how did that happen? How's it going? And what came of it?
I think the fact that, like, both brands are very set in their own aesthetic, like you said, right? For us, it was interesting because we were like, you know, what if we actually use handlooms and explore that as a fabric? And for them, they've never really done pre-draped saris. So they were like, let's have 43188 do pre-draped saris. Like you said, it just made sense. And it was like, why not? And of course, like, a lot of learning curve. You do know, like I know, like, if I have to use handlooms, what kinds I can use, what are the limitations to it.
And the wastage, I bet there
the wastage is, but you also, like, work through it.
Okay.
Right? Like, you kind of put things together, and again, you learn. Every fabric has its limitations and advantages. I think collaborations are the way to go.
They really are. I agree.
They are the future. Like, even when we did Pause, it was again a collaboration with How Are You Feeling Studio, and with them it was because they're both artists. It's a thought process, and, you know, where you're coming from, you're like, okay, fine, this is what we want to say. This is our expertise, is your expertise. Let's say, let's put two and two together and then do it. With Akshay, it was the same thing. Like, you know, he's like, I can style a look well, you can design a look well, let's just figure it out.
For men.
For men, like, I'm not the best at styling, he's not the best at designing, but you put things together and, like, you come up with something which looks great.
Yeah. And the collection, I must say, is fairly fluid.
It's very fluid. I mean, a lot of girls are buying it.
Absolutely.
But I have to say, men are great shoppers.
Yeah.
We think 10 times, like, you know, do like, I don't know, buy one or two things. Men will come, they will buy 10 things and be like, peace out, I'm done. Yeah. Don't talk to me for 10 months. Yeah. Show me when the next drop comes in.
Yeah, I think you're right. Men are great shoppers, but I also think that, you know, I have seen a different side of men's shopping when it's with designers.
Yeah.